Thank you, Rob, for coming to talk to us today and for being an ally to the Chrysalis Centre. Would you introduce yourself for us, please?
So my name's Rob. Currently work for Merseyside Fire and Rescue as a watch manager. So it means that I manage people and I manage how they feel about things as well as incidents.
Mm-hmm. Why did you decide to get involved with our charity?
To start off, domestic abuse means a lot to me personally. My mum was a victim of domestic abuse, and as I got older, I realised kind of what that meant and the impact it's had on her long term. So that's I should start there. Mm-hmm. The chief fire officer enabled me to make contact with yourselves and do some work with you. So he gave us basically a grant, a fund, if you want to say. And as soon as he gave us that, I knew what I wanted to do with it. So did a bit of research, looked into a few organisations, came across Chrysalis Centre Change, and I read all about you. And that's kind of why I knocked on Julie's door and pestered her to do some work with her. So there's kind of a long term, and that's what enabled me to do it.
Yeah, so it was quite personal to you.
Very.
Yeah. So you said about your experience with domestic abuse. Mm. Have you had any experience with mental health as well, or? Yeah,
absolutely. So domestic abuse wise was obviously through my mum, mm-hmm. But from a very young age, I had some really challenging times as a young child. We'll say that for now. Mm-hmm. When I got into high school, a lot of those things were never dealt with because I was a child. Yeah. So as I went into high school, I don't know, I never really figured it out. And a bully attached himself to me for whatever reason. So throughout my high school time, I was actually physically assaulted, and I was bullied quite badly. So when I eventually got out of high school, again, has a long-term effect, doesn't it? So I started suffering quite bad with mental health, not just from childhood experience, but then from that, and a few other personal experiences I had along the way. Yeah. I lost my father at quite a young age. Again, so all of those things just stack up. So personally, I ended up in a really, really bad place and never dealt with anything. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't know how to talk about it. Yeah. I didn't know that there was people out there like yourselves that can help, that can speak to you. So I dealt with a lot of that alone. Mm-hmm. Over time then, so you add a lot of years to that. Thinking that I'm fine, pretending everything's all right, wearing a mask as you do. I eventually kind of made it into the fire and rescue service. I felt like I wanted to do something positive. And I started dealing with a lot of other things then. So incident-wise, seeing things, experienced suicide for not the first time, but the first time where I was so involved in it. So dealing with incidents like that, definitely has an effect on yourself when you've had thoughts of suicide yourself. You've contemplated it, you've planned different things, but never really acted on it, and then you actually come face to face with it. It kind of I don't know, it kind of messed me up a lot inside. And although the job had a lot of control measures in place, it was almost like you still didn't talk about it, so you took it home. Myself and my wife, we tried for a baby. So that this is going to sound a bit bizarre, but so we were trying for a baby. Bear in mind all that's going on, and then 12 months later, we were blessed to have a baby girl. The only issue with that, I was blindsided by my childhood trauma. When she came, it brought everything back, and I was so terrified that she would face what I faced, and I couldn't handle it. So I ended up having pretty much a breakdown. I was taken. At that point, it was either kind of I was finished or I reached out, and luckily enough, I reached out to the right person. An organisation come and actually picked me up and took me in, and I started talking about things after that. So bear in mind, I'm 36, nearly 37 now, and my daughter's 3. So that happened 3 years ago, and it took that amount of time, that drip and tap kind of thing, for my own mental health to finally break. Obviously, other dealings are through colleagues in work, again, mainly incident-based and life-based to drip and tap. So I deal with it pretty much every single day, whether it's someone that I'm going to or a colleague in work or myself. That's my experience of poor mental health, should I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that with us. Do you think it impacted it anyway in not being able to talk about it because you're a man? Because there's this like kind of misogynistic expectations that men need to toughen up and just get on with it.
I think I can only speak from my own personal experience. I think for myself, the reason that I never spoke about things was the fact that my childhood trauma I couldn't, because it was family, and when you open your mouth about that, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm making this video, and it's probably going to be, if my mum sees it, it's going to be upsetting because she still doesn't know. And obviously I know I'm not going into detail about things, but you just don't talk about it because you just don't know. I didn't know how, and it wasn't so much to do with being a man. It was so, I was so ashamed of everything, that had happened, and then not. It's a bizarre thing to say that you don't want to be inside your own skin. How do you say that to somebody, and what's going to happen when you say it? So it wasn't so much being a male in general. It was what it was like. And then obviously when I went into the bullying aspect of things, I think maybe some of that was that it was really bad, and I felt like it would get worse if I spoke. So again, it wasn't so much a male thing for me personally. It was the fact that this bully was he was basically from a really, really bad family. So if I tell my mum or my dad, I know what they would do. They would protect me. They're completely incapable of operating in that world that they were in. So the next thing you think, well, what's the impact of that? They're going to be faced with, his brothers, and then someone gets hurt, So I took it all. It was on me. So that's why I never spoke about the bullying until I got through it. I spoke about it afterwards, because obviously when you leave high school with poor grades because of it, it's like you go separate ways. But the reason I never spoke was more because I was terrified of what would happen if I did, not again through just being male. I think when I got older, there's definitely an element of, I felt less, I would say less me. I didn't even know who I was anymore, to be fair. I probably still don't know to this day how I feel about things. I feel like I've just kind of laid a lot of things to rest now. Like I've got the rest of my life to look at, and I want to do better things for other people rather than just be a broken mess all the time. Speaking now, again, I personally don't feel like it takes anything away from my masculinity for saying that bad things have happened to me. Bad things happen to everybody all the time. It doesn't matter what gender or what you identify as, or whatever you want to be, whatever job title you have, doesn't matter. Like, you can experience things, you can be broken, you can put yourself back together and still be you. But that's just personal. I've seen people not speak because and I blatantly know that it's because they're like, well, if I talk, it'll make me seem weak. And that's both, male, female, whatever. I know both. I've said that, but it does kind of happen more in men.
So going back to like your experience with people you work with, because your environment is mainly male, do you think that the men talk enough about what they see, how it affects them? Do you think they talk about it enough?
No, I don't think. I think we're in a much better place than certainly when I started. And I know that historically, it wasn't the done thing to say, this has actually affected me badly. It was kind of, you'll hear the term like dark humour, if you want to say. And that's kind of, whether it's relationship based, family based, or incident based, you will always kind of have the dark humour about it. And I think that's kind of less now. I think people are more open. There's definitely the people I'm responsible for. I've got 2 females, and obviously the rest of the guys. I look after 8 firefighters, and I've got 2 development watch managers with me as well. So everybody individually is so different, and my crew are relatively quite young. I'm not saying it's an age thing, but I think if I definitely look at my own family, it was never like, the males in the family would never speak about emotions and feelings. But I've got 2 sisters, so I'm the youngest of 3, and I grew up with them. So maybe it was different for me because I was just so openly able to speak about how I felt about things.
Yeah.
But I've had experiences where that's not gone well as well. So opening up and then being shot down completely by someone that you trust is never nice. So I understand why people in general don't open up, because it's the fear of bearing your soul.
Yeah.
But definitely in the workplace, I think that it's getting better. It's still not great. They have a lot of control measures and things in place now to identify someone's acting differently. They mightn't want to talk about it, but we notice that, so people are more aware, which is great. But there's a lot more work to be done, and I do think that people hold a lot in. You know.
So, because we are a service that only helps people who don't identify as female right now, we get asked, what about men, quite often. Do you think that there's enough services or resources for men to access help for mental health or domestic abuse?
Yeah, I think, obviously I'm not an expert, so I'll just put that out there now. I don't know every organisation that's out there. I feel like, you're speaking to everybody at Chrysalis, everybody's got their own experience of domestic abuse, or whether that's physical or mental or whatever that might be. So I feel like the group here have got their story and they can help women. So that for me is an amazing thing. I personally feel like that there's organisations for men specifically. I think the issue that you've got is accessing them, because me personally, I didn't know where to go. The first thing I googled was how to commit suicide and it not be painful. I'll be honest, and if anyone listening to this has done that, you'll know that you can't find anything, because it just directs you to Samaritans and things. So that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to figure out how to end the pain. And again, it wasn't a case of my first protocol wasn't to see what services help men, and it should have been who can help me, rather than finding a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The fact that Chrysalis support mainly women, I know that after speaking to some of your colleagues and things, that they're very interested in getting to the root of the problem, why domestic abuse happens in the first place. So if we're talking about just domestic abuse in general, whether again financial, physical, mental, whatever that might be, I feel like if the inflictor is a male, we need to kind of access what their issue is, and then hopefully you'll have less women to deal with. I feel like I feel like the issue is that as much as we want it to be, equality isn't there, and it's a respect issue as well. So I feel like men kind of take a lot of, we're there and we take everything for granted and everyone needs to bow down to us kind of thing, but they never deal with their own issues. So even though that's a separate issue, because they're so strong and they don't talk and everything bottles up, and it's again how deep's the bucket, it overflows eventually, and unfortunately it's our loved ones around us that have to deal with that mess, whether you're in a same-sex couple or you're kind of single and it's your friends that deal with it. But I do feel like there's organisations out there like yourself that are genuinely just trying to help, and that you're, I don't know, if it kind of feels like you're fighting a losing battle, because we never get to the root of the problem. And I don't think that's because there's not enough organisations. I feel like that's because we're just not coming forward saying, I've got an issue and I can't deal with it myself. I hope that answers your question.
It makes a lot of sense, and my last question for you, it kind of relates to some of the things you've already said. How do you think that as a society we can encourage men, women, anyone to speak up and just get the help that they need, instead of doing the final decisions, like you've said in what your answer's been before?
I would love to kind of give, the solution to that. But I kind of feel like the only thing that we can do is keep talking and keep being present, and keep sharing our stories, because, if you shared a story that to 10 people, it might resonate with one, and you've helped that one person. So, you know, the same with myself. If I can speak, if this message doesn't hit anybody, then okay, well, at least we tried. So then you just keep exploring avenues to get people to open up. But I genuinely feel like the way to do it is normally the simplest, and it's almost like when you say things or you get it out there, then that's the start, isn't it? So that's normally the hardest part. It's definitely the hardest part for me. My counsellor made me, because I couldn't physically say it, she made me write it down, and it was really bizarre at that moment. It was like she took the whole weight of it off me, and she put it in her pocket. She took the piece of paper and put it in her pocket and said, "That's mine. There's one to anymore. That's mine." So it was something simple like that, but getting to that point, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I held on to that for 33 years of being miserable and not really knowing. I never accessed anybody. So if I did, I would have got to that point. And I think the message that I would give is just to speak to somebody. If it's a friend who doesn't even know what to do with it, it's almost like that. A problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? It definitely works. But I think that just, like I said, being out there as much as you can be, speaking to everybody that you can do, and just generally checking if someone's okay. If you notice something off or the behaviour's different, just ask. Like, the worst thing that's going to happen is that they say, bugger off, I don't want to talk about it, and then at least you've kind of planted a seed. One thing I should say is that sometimes when you've opened that kind of Pandora's box, it's knowing where to signpost people as well, which is quite challenging sometimes. So the more you're aware of it and aware of yourself, and you read and you kind of know more. At the start, I didn't know anything about organisations like this, and now I do. So I would just encourage people to do the same. Be mindful, be aware, and be present, and let's just all try and help each other, because let's face it, the world's pretty savage, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you very much for sharing, and it's been great speaking to you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.